Offences against property. So up to now, we've been dealing with offences against the person. We dealt with non-fatal offences as well as fatal offences last semester, and we have started off this semester with sexual offences. Right? So now we are talking about offences against property. Quite a number of offences that we're going to look at: uh, theft, robbery, burglary, fraud, and criminal damage. So all this is offences when you commit against the property, right? Not against a person, right? Obviously, a person would be the victim, but the focus will be on the object itself, on the property. And this is under English law, whereas under Malaysian law, we'll also be looking at theft. There'll be robbery, but instead of burglary, we'll be looking at uh, criminal trespass, house trespass, and housebreaking, right? And then instead of the offense of fraud, under the penal code, we're looking at the offense of cheating. And instead of criminal damage, what it is called under the penal code is mischief. Yeah, right. You don't call it criminal damage; you call it mischief. Okay, it's quite funny of how some people well, we can't blame them, right? When they hear about the offense of mischief, they'll be like, are you saying that they're being mischievous? But if we, as law students, as you all will learn that when a person is said to have committed mischief, it is basically committing criminal damage. Right, but that's a long way more. We'll be focusing on theft for this week, and then you'll go on to next week also. Right, so the offense of theft, I absolutely love the offense of theft under English law, right? Because it's very technical, and I suppose that I'm a technical person, right? So if you're a technical person, you like technicalities, then you would really enjoy the offense of theft. So when we think of theft, right, we normally would think of a person taking away the property of another person. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. That is theft actually. But in today's world that we live in, it can be a little bit more trickier. Like for example, right, this movie came out years ago, really, really long ago, right? The Net. This is basically when Sandra Bullock, the main character, her identity was stolen. So will that come under theft or not if you steal a person's identity? And this is another movie quite some time ago. One of the one of the actresses here is actually our own Malaysia's Lee Sin Jie, right? I think she's a absolutely wonderful actress as well as a wonderful singer. So I don't know whether how many of you know that she actually sings also, right? I absolutely love her songs. Too bad I think that she wants to focus more on acting instead of singing. This is a very interesting movie, Coma, because it is actually based on an urban legend, right? An urban legend. So that there was long ago, okay, there was this urban legend, and of course back then we don't have Facebook. Back then we didn't have WhatsApp, but these things go viral by email. So people will send email to each other regarding this apparently to be careful, right, of of certain women that you will meet, because apparently a lot of men they will meet women at bars or hotel restaurants, and then she will invite them, or she will invite the man to go up to her room in the hotel. He will go up to the room, and the next thing that he knows, he passes out. The next thing that he knows is that he wakes up. He's in the bathtub. The bathtub is filled with ice, and there is a telephone, cordless phone next to him, and there is a note. And when he reads the note, basically the note tells him that your kidneys have been taken. Okay, so we have cut you up, we have taken out your kidney, and we have put you on ice, and that's keeping you alive. So here's a phone next to you. Go and call for an ambulance, and don't leave the bathtub, or else you will die. All right. So it was very interesting, but it has eventually been dispelled. It's been busted. It's just a myth because it doesn't happen, and it takes a lot of skill, right, for a person to remove kidney. Because the reasoning behind this is that these people actually steal people's body parts, right? Steal the body parts and sell it on black market. Um, so can you actually steal somebody's body parts or not? Right? Would that amount to theft? At least if coma was real. Okay, I don't know how many of you remember this. I every time I show these slides, I always say that I should update my slides for something newer. This was from a series called Heroes, right? And one of the main characters there you can see is the one with the wearing the spectacles. His name is Hiro Nakamura, right? Hero. Okay, and if you remember Heroes, basically Heroes is about these individuals who possess superpowers, right? Something like mutants. Yeah, they got superpowers, and basically, the catchphrase for that series, at least for season one, was that in order to save the world, they must save the cheerleader. So the catchphrase was "Save the cheerleader, save the world." And in order for Hero to actually go and save the cheerleader, he need to get this katana, this Japanese sword that you see here, right? But it is placed in a museum, and he would have to go and steal that katana, right? He had to take it without permission in order to save the world. So then the question is that will he be charged for theft or not? Because he's got a good reason, right? He wants to take the sword in order to save the cheerleader, in order to save the world. So would that be considered to be theft? Now here's another situation. What if you threw, what if you place something into your dustbin, right? Or you place something into a dustbin, okay? Can somebody else come and then take it, right? And take it and says that, well, you threw in a dustbin, that means you don't want it anymore. It's fair game for everybody. I can come and I can take it and I can keep it for myself. What do you think? We're going to look in one of the cases based on this shortly after this, right? Whether can you steal somebody's rubbish or not? All right, theft. Now, theft is found under Theft Act, right? Now, be careful because there are two Theft Acts, right? There are two Theft Acts. So, yeah, for some reason or another, strange that there are two Theft Acts, and we are looking at the Theft Act 1968, right? The Theft Act 1968. So theft is defined under Section 1 of the Theft Act. Very easy, okay? And this is the wonderful definition of theft, right? It is quite a lot. You see that's quite long, right? And it's very technical, okay? So theft is defined as a person who dishonestly appropriates property belonging to another with the intention of permanently depriving the other of it. Okay, so it's not just taking somebody's thing, right, or stealing it. You got to define what is stealing. Now, bear in mind that in Theft Act it says that stealing is basically committing theft. All right, so this person is guilty of stealing a property. He's guilty of theft if he right dishonestly appropriates property belonging to another with the intention of permanently depriving the other of it. Right, it is pretty long. But trust me, right, by the end of this semester, you will know it at your fingertips, right? Something that you cannot forget, something that I learned when I was a student, and something that I can never forget, right? So that is the definition of theft. Okay, now looking at the definition, right, you can break it up to the actus reus and the mens rea. Normally if this was a live lecture, I would ask you all, so what are the elements of actus reus, what are the elements of mens rea? In fact, how many elements can you pick up from that definition? So the correct answer, as you can see on the slides, is that there are five elements. There are five elements of theft, which means that if you're for the prosecution, you will have to prove these five elements beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you're acting for a defense counsel, all you need to do is just to raise a reasonable doubt on any one of these elements. So in that sense, some people have said that criminal law practice is easy, right? All you have to do is just raise doubts, okay, and you don't have to dispel every single element, just one element, because you see the burden is on the prosecution to prove the case. So the prosecution will have to prove all five elements, and they have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay, so from the definition, you'll see that there are five elements, and out of these five elements, three are the elements that belongs to actus reus, that are the actus reus for the offense, and two elements are the elements of the mens rea, right? Mens rea. So three elements for actus reus, two things for the mens rea, right? Now you will see that the theft act is arranged in a way that is very straightforward. So section 1 is the definition of theft. And if you look at the definition of theft, the five elements there, you will see that that's how the other elements have been listed out, right, according to the section. So section 1 is definition of theft. Section 2 is dishonestly. Section 3 appropriates for property 5 belonging to another with the intention to permanently deprive the other of it, right? So you dishonestly appropriate property belonging to another with the intention to permanently deprive the other of it. So let's start off with the actus reus first. Okay, it is arranged this way. Uh, so instead of going from appropriation, let's look at property and belonging to another first. A bit more straightforward, a bit easier. Then we go to the interesting and challenging part, right? So let's start off with what amounts to property under the Theft Act, right? So basically, we are talking about what you can steal, right? What is the subject matter of the theft? So we look at section 4. Now, section 4 provides that property includes money, all other property, real or personal, including things in action and other intangible property, right? So property only is limited to this kind of things, right? Obviously, it includes money, right? And it includes real property as well as personal property, right? Real property and personal property. And this includes things in action and other intangible property. So let's break it up. Money, personal property, right? So that's pretty straightforward. Whatever that you own, that's your personal property. Real property, but we're not talking about real or fake, right? We're talking about real as in land. It does includes real property, but it is limited to you will see subsection 2 later on, right? We're going to deal with that. Not very important because we're not going to talk about theft of real property. We don't usually not talk about that. The focus will be more on money and personal property, right? But it can also include real property. Now, property will also include things in action, right? Things in action means things which are actionable, things that you can sue a person for, although you may not have uh, physical possession of it, right? Some things you don't have physical possession of it, but it belongs to you, and you can sue a person for it if somebody takes it away. Now, a very good example, a very simple example would be, for example, would be shares in a company, right? Shares in a company. Now, right, of course, there are share certificates, but share certificates only show that you actually own the shares, right? And the shares in the company, how much, like you own 50% of the company, 60% of the company. Now, it's not something that you can physically hold on to, all right? But it's something that belongs to you, and that you can actually go to court and just sue them for your share of the company, right? So there's things in action. That means things that are actionable, legal rights. You have the right to actually sue them for it because it belongs to you. So you can just steal a person's share in the company, all right? And other intangible property. So things like, it will include things like, for those of you doing intellectual property or have done intellectual property, right, it talks about patents and intellectual property rights. Okay, these are other intangible property. Section 4 also makes it clear that it does not include wild plants and animals, electricity, body parts, and corpse. Okay, so let's go through some of this in greater detail. As mentioned, we will look at section 4 subsection 2 regarding real property, right? It's quite wordy, right? Section 4 subsection 2. It's not very important though, but for purposes of completeness, let's look at it very quickly, right? A person cannot steal land, right, or things forming part of the land and severed from it by him or by his directions, except in the following cases. So it starts out by saying that you cannot steal, right? Except under these situations, that's when you can be considered as stolen land or things forming part of land and severed by him, right? So we're talking about a situation where the person is a trustee or personal representative or is authorized by the power of attorney or is liquidator of a company or otherwise to sell and dispose of the land belonging to another. He appropriates the land or anything forming part of it by dealing with it in breach of the confidence reposed in him. Okay, so he's authorized to actually sell or to dispose of the land, right? The land actually belongs to another, but then he deals with it in breach of the confidence that is reposed in him. That means, right? You. Let's just say you are the landowner, right? And you tell him that, all right, I appoint you, I authorize you with the power of attorney, or right, or you can be the trustee or personal representative. Okay, and you will have to, if you studied, you remember your land law, you will have to basically follow the instructions that you're given, right? What you are allowed to do. You cannot just do whatever you want, okay, because you are authorized by the power of attorney or according to the trust agreement, right? So if a person deals with it in breach of the confidence, then he can be considered to have stolen that land, right? Can be considered to have stolen that land. B, right? When he is not in possession of the land and appropriates anything forming part of the land, how? By severing it or causing it to be severed or after it has been severed, right? So you can actually appropriate anything forming part of the land by causing it to be severed or severing it itself. And C, when being in possession of a land under tenancy, so this may apply to some of you when you go to the UK, if you go to the UK, he appropriates the whole or part of any fixture or structure let to be used with the land. So what are considered to be fixtures or structures, right? So you're in possession of it as a tenant, and then you actually appropriates it, right? Either in whole or either or just part of any fixture or structure that is used to be that is let to be used with the land. Okay, then it can be considered to be theft. Now moving on, we have dealt with the other things already for what it includes. What it doesn't include, it does not include generally wild plants and animals. Right. So these are photos of this is a photo of a wild mushrooms growing wild, right? Mushrooms growing wild on my campus when I was a student. Okay. So can you go and pick these mushrooms and cook them and eat them? I would advise you not to. Okay. But this is covered under subsection 3. Subsection 3 or section 4, it provides that anyone who picks, so the key word here is picking, right? You pick mushrooms growing wild on any land, pick flowers, fruit, foliage from a plant wild on any land, does not steal what he picks. Okay? So as long as it's growing wild, right? Mushrooms growing wild, flowers growing wild, fruit or foliage from any plant that's growing uh, wild, right? Then you are not considered to be stealing, even though you're not in possession of the land. So you go to somebody else's land and you can pick all these things. Okay. You'll see the exception there, unless you do it for reward or for sale or other commercial purpose. Okay. Do it for reward or for sale or other commercial purpose. So you pick the wild ones, fine. Right? You pick it for your own to decorate your room, to eat, okay, fine. But if you do it for reward, and you're talking about monetary reward, right? Uh, so yeah, if you pluck flowers and you give it to another person and you win the person's love, then yeah, I don't think that comes under reward. Okay, or you pluck it and then you sell it or you use it for other commercial purposes, right? Then it can be considered to be a subject of an offense for theft. Yep. So this is again photos taken from my campus last time. So during summertime, you will see these berries growing wild. Right, these berries are just growing wild. You can see in the background there, the building there is actually where I used to stay. So we walk past all this every day. And then on weekends, it's so interesting because on weekends you will see that families, right? Parents will bring their children onto our campus. So right, it is a well back then anyway. I don't know whether things have changed or not. It is a public area, so people will come onto our campus with their children. It's like a weekend activity, right? It's quite nice. You see them bringing little buckets and pails, and then they'll be plucking all these berries. No problem with that because the law allows it, right? This is growing wild, although it's growing on our campus, but it's growing wild. So as long as you're not trespassing on our campus, which is a different offense anyway, then they can pick it, right? They will not be charged for theft. But if they pick it and then they go and sell it at the market, that's a different story altogether, right? It's a different story altogether. So similarly, right, we see this growing wild. Also, these are holly leaves, and well, I don't know, maybe during close to Christmas, you want to pluck all this and decide to decorate your house with it or your room with it. That's fine. But if some of you all start making Christmas ornaments and selling it, right, then that's a different case altogether. What about this, right? Trees. Can you actually pluck these trees? Take these trees and take it back to your house or to your house and use it as a Christmas tree. I remember when I first moved to Subang, so it's really, really, really long ago, right? Sorry, not Subang. I moved to USJ. Okay, when I moved to USJ, right? So not many people were staying there, and the town council has planted very nice trees along the road. So there was one night when I was coming back home and I actually saw this person, right, stop his car by the roadside. He actually uprooted a little tree like this, well, not as fat as this tree, but something like a tree like that planted by on the middle of the road, literally, right, the road divider there. He uprooted it and put it in his car and drove away, probably bringing it to his own house and planting it in his own house, right? So can that be considered to be theft? Well, if you look back again at subsection 3, it talks about picking mushrooms, picking flowers, fruit, or foliage. So I don't think that uprooting a tree is considered to be picking, right? It's more like severing it from the ground itself. Right, wild creatures, animals, okay? Animals, doesn't talk about, doesn't talk about animals which kept as pets. Obviously, if somebody takes your pet dog or your pet cat, then that can be considered to be theft. Here it talks about wild creatures, right? Wild creatures shall be regarded as property, right? Uh, whether the wild creatures is tamed or untamed, right? Tame or untamed. But you cannot steal a wild creature that is not tamed and not ordinarily kept in captivity, okay, or the carcass of such creature. So if it's a wild creature that is not tame, right, and is not ordinarily kept in captivity, then uh, you can be considered to, you can be, you can be considered to have stolen it, unless it has been reduced into possession by or on behalf of another person, and possession of it has not been lost or abandoned, or another person is in the cause of reducing it into possession. Okay, so there's quite a lot going on there, right? It's quite a lot going on there, but basically we are referring to wild creatures now. Okay, not your pets. We are referring to wild creatures, and specifically wild creatures that are not tame or ordinarily kept in captivity. Okay, and basically you cannot steal, although they are considered to be property, but you cannot steal. So right, let's deal with examples here. Okay, a person cannot steal a wild creature not tame and nor ordinarily kept in captivity. There's a photo that I took when I was in Taman Negara, um, our main national park, right? We were strolling along, my friend and I, and then we came across this family of wild boars. Where you can see the wild boar there, and you can see the smaller ones. Those are baby wild boars. Okay, so well, we were caught off guard and we were a bit frightened, because we know wild boars actually can be quite dangerous. At the end of the day, just like all wild animals, right? Most of the time, if you don't bother them, right, they've got no reason to bother you, right? They've got no reason to bother you. So we just kept still. I'm sure that they are used to seeing tourists and humans walking around. Okay, so now these are wild creatures, right? They are not tame, and they're not ordinary kept in captivity. So technically, yeah, you can go and take it and keep it for yourself and have roast boar, right, or curry wild boar for a meal. So when we go into the Orang Asli settlement, sometimes we do see, right, this Orang Asli, they were riding on their motorcycles, and then on the back, instead of a pillion rider, they've got a dead wild boar there because they just killed the wild boar and they bring it back home and going to feed their family. Well, it's not theft, okay? It could be other offenses, especially if it's endangered species, and of course in Taman Negara we are not allowed to harm or kill any animals there, but it won't be considered to be theft unless it has been reduced into possession. How do you reduce it into possession? Okay, very simply, right? If it's, for example, this the giraffes. This is a zoo. Zoo from in the UK. Again, when I was photo taken when I was studying there, right? So these animals are wild animals. Okay, I don't think you can consider them to be tame, right? But they have been reduced into property. So if you want to take any of them back home, then that can be considered to be theft. Right. Electricity. Can you steal electricity? Now, technically, no. Right? Technically, no. But it actually comes under a different offense. So Section 13 of the Theft Act talks about dishonest abstraction of electricity. So if you so to say steal somebody's electricity or steal electricity without paying for it, right? It's not theft. It's not theft, but it's considered to be an offense of dishonest abstraction of electricity. And then body parts and corpse, right? We talked about kidneys earlier on. Can you steal a person's body parts, or can you even consider steal corpse, right? A dead body. Now, this is a place which, unfortunately, not many people can visit these days. This is the British Museum, right? One of the uh, main tourist attractions in London. In fact, I think in a lot of this is ranked as the number one tourist attraction. I'm not a big fan of the British Museum, right? Yeah, I like it, right? But I find other museums nicer. British Museum is not so much my cup of tea. I prefer galleries, art, and natural history museum, science museum, right? But the British Museum, yeah, eventually, if you have the opportunity, go and visit it. It's called the British Museum, but it does not have a lot of things which are British inside. In fact, the proper name for this museum is probably not meaning to offend anybody, but what the British took from the rest of the world museum. Okay, so you go in there, you'll see what the British took from all from countries all over the world. Okay, in fact, a lot have been talked about this. A lot of movies have been made about this, about how other countries, right, they come and they want to demand for these things because they say that it belongs to us. It's clearly not British, and yeah, and you can go there, right? They're divided by the sections where they're taken from, and there is a small section of course, one of the first few places that I went to in the British Museum was the section for Malaysia. A small section, yeah, but they still have some of our Malaysian stuff there in the British Museum, right? Not a lot. One of the biggest attraction within the British Museum is are these, right? Yes, Egyptian mummies. You see a lot of them there, right? Which obviously not British, but taken by the British from Egypt, right? So these mummies, as we know, contains the remains of people from Egypt, kings, pharaohs, and other important people. So the question then is that can you go and steal this, so to say, dead bodies or mummies? The authority for this is the Crown Against Kelly. Crown Against Kelly says that corpses are usually not considered to be property, right? And body parts also. Unless, right, so the exception is that unless it has been preserved by human skill and kept for purposes of exhibition or education. Okay, so you can go to a morgue, you can go to the cemetery and take the body. It will probably be some other offense, right? Desecrating grave and things like that. But it will not be considered to be theft. It will not be considered to be theft unless that body has been preserved by human skill and kept either for exhibition purposes or for educational purposes, right? The mummies in the British Museum, they have clearly been preserved by human skill, not by natural methods, but by human skill, and they are clearly kept there for purposes of exhibition, right? And to a certain extent, education also. So you go to some universities, you will see that there are some mummified bodies for students to learn, right? So it's been preserved by human skill and kept for purposes of education. Now, if you take those, then it can be considered to be theft because it's considered to be property under the Theft Act. Right, so that's property, section 4. Now we move on, right? Under theft, it must be property belonging to another, right? It must be property belonging to another, section 5. So this seems to be pretty straightforward, or is it? Let's look at section 5. Property should be regarded as belonging to any person having possession or control of it, or having in it any propriety, right, or interest. Okay? Not being an equitable interest arising only from an agreement to transfer or grant an interest. So you see that the property can be considered to belong to another in three main ways. When the other person is having possession of it or having control of it, or when the person has got the propriety right or interest. Now, property right interest is the pretty straightforward. Okay, whatever you own, you have the propriety right or interest. You bought your phone, okay, so your propriety right over it. You bought your laptop, you bought a bottle of water, right? So you have propriety right over it. But even if you didn't buy it, right? If you are in possession of it or having control over it, that property under the law is still regarded as belonging to you. If you have possession or control over it, even though it doesn't belong to you, but you're possessing it or you are having control of it, right? Now, so propriety interest, all right, is pretty straightforward. So let's look first on possession. Therefore, it is interesting to note that under English law, you can actually steal something from someone, steal a property from someone who is not the owner of it, but the person is actually possessing that property, right? He is in possession of that property. Okay. Uh, Normally in the lecture hall, I will always point out to the laptop that I'm using. This laptop doesn't belong to me. I don't have propriety right or interest over the laptop. It's the university that's got propriety right or interest over it. But the laptop is in my possession. So therefore, it is property belonging to another for everybody else because it is a property, clearly a laptop, and it's belonging to another, it's belonging to me, right? Even though I'm not the owner, but I'm having possession of it. A good illustration, a good case, an interesting case would be Turner number 2, where the case of Turner number 2, uh, where in this case, the accused sent his car to the workshop. So the workshop people, the mechanics, they fix up the car. And after fixing up the car, they park the car within the compound of the workshop. Something like this, right? Something like this, not exactly like this, but basically the workshop is there, and within their compound, within their area, the car was parked there, right? So the owner came to the mechanics compound there, and without paying for it, he actually took his car and drove it off and went home for it and went home with it. Now he was charged for theft because the car was in possession of the mechanics. Right? The car was in possession of the mechanics, and the court said that on appeal, right? Because the question that the main question that was dealt with on appeal is whether is this considered to be property belonging to another. He says that I have a property right over it. I'm the owner of it. But the court said that for purposes of this case, it is property belonging to the mechanics, because they were in possession of the car. It was within their area. It was within their it was in their workshop itself, right? And the court said that the mechanics, right, basically had a lien over the car. They can hold on to the car and they don't have to release it until the owner actually pays them for the work that was done on the car, right? Until they get paid, then they will release the car. So I think that that's quite normal, right? You send a car to the mechanic, they will fix it, and then you pay for it. After you pay for the services, then they will give you back the car, right? And if you don't pay for it, they can still hold on to it. Okay, so very interesting in the sense that you can be charged for theft, for stealing something which belongs to you. Well, sorry, not belongs to you. Yeah, technically it belongs to you, right? The owner of the property can be charged because at that point of time it was legally in the possession of someone else. So that's Turner number two. Now it can also be in control, right, of another person. If it's in control of another person, then it can be considered as belonging to that person. Authority for this is the case of Woodman. This was a case where it was a factory, an unused factory, which was bought over. So the new owners basically put, fence it up and close it up, right? It was unused factory and they have not used it yet, but they bought it and it sorry they bought it and they were the owners of it. Now on top of that, inside the factory, right, inside this old factory, there was scrap metal. Now the owners thought that they had removed all the scrap metal already and sold it off, but there was still some more which they didn't know was still in the factory. So the accused in this case went inside the factory and removed the scrap metal and sold it. Right now he was charged for theft, and one of the arguments was that the owners don't even know that it was there. Right, they didn't even know that the scrap metal was there. But the court said that doesn't matter because the owners of the factory were in control of it, right? They were in control of the factory, and whatever that's inside of it is within their control, and therefore, whatever that's inside, even if they don't know about it, even if they had no notice about it, it was within their control, and therefore is considered to be belonging to them, right? So that's possession and control, right? Propriety interests, generally straightforward. If you are the owner, then it belongs to you also. Okay, but let's look at some other interesting areas under propriety interests. Okay, lost property, or maybe not so much lost property, or property that's been thrown away, right? Williams and Phillips. So in the case of Williams and Phillips, it was regarding things which were thrown away already, thrown into a so to say, dustbin, right? Now the people who collected this rubbish, this at that time anyway, it's quite old. So yeah, this is their laptop chair, basically. And those people who collect the rubbish, they call the dustmen. So they work for the corporation, the company, right? And they will go and collect all the rubbish and put it into put it into their laptop chair, right? Put it into the rubbish vehicle and then send it back to the company. Okay, but for some of these dustmen, they took the rubbish, some of the things which are collected, and they kept it for themselves and they sold it and made money out of it. Now they were charged for theft, right? They were charged for theft, and their defense was that this is not property belonging to anyone. It is property that's thrown away. It's considered to be abandoned property, right? So it's a free for all, and therefore I have the right to actually take it and do whatever I want to with it, right? And you cannot be said that I committed theft because the element of belonging to another cannot be proven, right? It doesn't belong to anyone. That was their argument. Now the court rejected their argument, right? The court rejected their argument. I think to understand the context better, obviously go and read the case. But just to let you know that now the corporation has got an agreement with their employees. So these dustmen are their employees. And the agreement is that all the rubbish will be taken back, and then whatever that can be sold will be sold off, and it will be shared between the corporation as well as the dustman. So actually, what this dustman did was unconscionable, right? There was element of dishonesty there. Instead of taking it back to the company and then letting them sort it out and sell it, and then everybody getting a share of it, they kept it for themselves. So clearly, yeah, they had some criminal intent, right? It was clearly wasn't conscionable. Okay, but the question then is that let's talk about whether not so much whether it's right or wrong, but can it fulfill all the elements or not? And the key thing here would be whether can it be said to be belonging to another, because it was clearly property. There was appropriation of it, which we'll talk about later. Their intention to permanently deprive the other of it because they took it and they sold it off, and there was clearly elements of dishonesty, right? So then it all hinges on whether is this considered to be property belonging to another. The court said that yes, it is property belonging to another. So this is what the judge held, right? The first point that's taken here, that the property was abandoned, is on the face of it untenable. So of course that it is not so, right? This is what the judge said. If I put refuse in my dustbin outside my house, I am not abandoning it in the sense that I am leaving it for anybody to take it away. So that's the argument, right? We're not talking about throwing it at a public area in a dustbin, okay, in a public dustbin where you go to a mall, throw it in the dustbin, you go on campus, you throw into one of the dustbins there. Okay, we're talking about my dustbin, your own dustbin, right? Which is placed outside of your house. So he says that if I put things inside there, right, I'm not abandoning it. I'm not leaving it there and say that whoever wants, take it away. Then who is it he leaving it for? He says that I'm putting it out so that it may be collected and taken away by the local authority. And until it has been taken away by the local authority, it is my property, right? So I leave it there. It's my property. It will be my property until the local authority comes and collect it, which is through its employees, the dustman. And I can take it back and prevent anybody else from taking it away. So how many times have you actually accidentally thrown something away and then you got to go and open it up and take back the things, right? So it is simply put there for the corporation or the local authority to come and clear it. So once they come and clear it away, it becomes their property. So if it's in the dustbin, it's not abandoned, it still belongs to me. When they come and collect it away, it doesn't belong to the dustman, it belongs to the company, the corporation, right? It belongs to the corporation. It becomes their property. So at no point of time does it become abandoned. It is always at any point of time belonging to someone, right? Belonging to someone. So therefore, there is no ground for saying there's abandoned property. As long as the property remains on the owner's premises, it cannot be abandoned property. It is a wholly untenable position to say that refuse which a householder puts out to be taken away is abandoned. All right. Now, to understand it better, and put it into the local context, if you go to the UK, you will see that there are special areas where the dustbins are actually placed. And similarly, right, if you go to most of the houses now, as far as I know anyway, especially in Subang Jaya, right, you'll see, right, this is within the property, and this is where the dustbin is kept. So the person will come out and put their rubbish into the dustbin, which is still within the property of within the boundary of their property. So it still belongs to them, and nobody can actually go in without trespassing and take it away. And it's meant to be taken away by the lapsap chair when they come, right? The rubbish collector. So there must be a clear intention for the person to want to relinquish rights to the property, right? There must be clear evidence to show that I want to relinquish my right. By putting it into a dustbin, which is placed outside the house or still within the compound, but still within the premise, as the judge said, it's within my premise. Although it's in the dustbin, it's still within my premise. Okay, it's not abandoning it, right? It still belongs to me. It still belongs to me. It's a different case, of course, if you throw it into a dustbin in the public area. So that's lost property, right? Williams and Phillips. Property will not be considered to be abandoned unless there's clear evidence that the owner wishes to relinquish his rights over that property. Now, what about property that's held on account for another? We see under subsection 3 or section 5, right? When a person receives property from or on account of another and is under obligation to the other to retain and deal with that property or its process in a particular way, the property or process shall be regarded as against him as belonging to another. Okay, right? As I've said before, I'm sure I've said this before, you see something like this, you break it up, right? To be able to grasp what it's trying to say. So let's break it up word for line by line, phrase by phrase, where a person receives property from or on account of another. So receive it on account of another or receive it from another person. And the person receiving the property is under an obligation to the other, which is the where he gets the property from, to retain and deal with that property or its proceeds in a particular way. The property or proceeds should be regarded as belonging to the other. So although it is in possession, right? Although it is in possession of that person now, okay? He doesn't own it, but he receives property. So he receives property, he can say, hey, I'm in possession of it right now. But if he is under an obligation to the person that he receives it from to deal with it in a particular way, then that property or person should be regarded as belonging to that other person, to the person that he got it from. All right. Now let's look at the cases to illustrate this. Crown against Hall. And this has to do with a travel agent where basically he collected money from customers and to plan for a trip for them to go to the States, to the USA, right, to America. But after collecting money from the customers, what happened? Right, he took the money and he ran away with the money. So now the question then is, can he be said to have committed theft? The money that he took was in his possession anyway. Okay, was in his possession anyway. So the question then is that money considered to be belonging to his customers? But the customers gave it to him, right? He received it from his customers. Now the key thing here, right, is that not only must you have received the property, you are an obligation to retain and deal with it in a particular way, right? In a particular way. But based on the facts of Crown against Hall, there was no such obligation, right? There was no such obligation. Now, for example, right, if he was actually collecting the money to buy the flight tickets, then he's under then basically he's under an obligation to deal with them, right? This money, the actual amount for flight ticket, right? So you take it and you buy the flight tickets for those people that he got the money from. Then it will come under this. But unfortunately, in this case, there was no such obligation found on the facts, right? It was just money which they gave to him, pursuant to wanting to go for a trip. So he was not under any obligation, or they couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was under an obligation to deal with that money in a particular way. Now you compare that with David and Bernard. Okay, yeah, I call this the fabulous flatmate case, right? So some of you might be in this position. If you go to the UK and study there, I would recommend that you actually stay on campus. They'll be pretty straightforward when it comes to getting things done, right? You just pay the university and then you get to stay on campus already. When you go there, you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to pay the electricity bill. You don't have to pay for the internet. You don't have to pay poll tax, right? You don't have to pay for the gas. Okay, everything is paid for. You just pay one lump sum to the university and everything is there. But if you stay outside, right, you rent a private accommodation, then you have to think about all these things. Okay, you have to think about, I need to pay electricity bill, I need to pay other bills also, like internet bill, gas, and things like that. So that's what happened in the case of David and Bernard, right? So a few of them were staying together, and they gave money to one of the flatmates and instructed her to use that money to pay for the electricity bill. So clearly, in this case, right, the accused received money from the flatmates, and she was under an obligation to use that money and pay the electricity bill, right, on behalf of the others. But she didn't do that. She was such a fabulous flatmate. She took the money and she bought Christmas presents for all of them. Okay, so she was charged and she was found guilty of theft because the money was meant to be used to pay for something. She was under obligation to deal with the money in a particular way, but she didn't. She used it for something else. Another case is the Crown against Wayne. This was a case where the appellant helped raise and collect money for charity, but failed to pass the money to them. So he was helping out in this charity drive, working to help this basically this charitable cause. So people paid him the money, and obviously he received the money and was under an obligation to give it to the people, right? To give it to the people that he was working for, the charitable cause. But he didn't do that, right? He didn't do that. Just like recently we talked about people giving food, giving money to buy food for those who are in need of the food, and apparently, right, it was alleged that the food packs, which were supposed to cost 100 ringgit, cost only around 35 ringgit. Okay, so you are given 100 ringgit and you're supposed to use that 100 ringgit to buy food and give the food to the poor. But if you take the 100 ringgit and you only use 35 ringgit of it to buy the food, and the remainder of it you keep it for yourself, that clearly is considered to be, that clearly can come under theft under the English law, right? So that's property held on account for another. Now, what about property which was obtained by mistake? Right, Shadrach Shigari. This is the authority for this. Property that was obtained by mistake. Now, when a person gets property by another's mistake and is under an obligation to make restoration, either in whole or in part of that property or its proceeds or the value thereof, then to the extent of that obligation, the property or proceeds should be regarded as against him as belonging to the person entitled to the restoration. And the intention not to make restoration should be regarded as intention to permanently deprive that person of the property or proceeds. Okay, let me take a breath. Let's break it up, right? So when you get property by another's mistake, so a simple example is that you eat at the restaurant, something that probably you may not have done for a long time. You pay for the food, and you're supposed to get change, right? The change is 10 ringgit. You're supposed to get 10 ringgit change. However, the you are given 20 ringgit instead of 10 ringgit, right? You're given 20 ringgit. So you get property by number. They mistakenly gave you 20 ringgit instead of 10 ringgit. So are you under an obligation to make restoration in whole or in part of the property or its proceeds or value thereof? Yes. Okay, I know some of you say, no, let's just go, right? Uh, that's not right morally and legally, so that's not right. You are under obligation to make restoration in whole or in part. Well, not in whole, right? Because out of the 20 ringgit that you receive, 10 ringgit belongs to you. So in part of it, the other 10 ringgit, right? You are under obligation to give them back. Hey, I'm supposed to get 10 ringgit and you gave me 20. So here, take back 10. So you are under obligation to make restoration. Then to that extent of that obligation, the property or possession should be regarded as belonging to the person entitled to the restoration, right? So that 10 ringgit they're supposed to give back is considered to be belonging to the restaurant owners. If you don't intend to make restoration, you're considered to have intended to permanently deprive that person of that property or of that proceeds. So Shadrach Shigari, right? In this case, basically he asked the bank to transfer 286 ringgit. sorry, $286. This American bank, British bank kind of thing, right? So the amount was supposed to be $286, but the bank instead transferred $286,000. Okay, so you see under obligation to restore all of this. No, it's under obligation to only restore 286,000 less 286, right? $286,000 less $286. So how much is that? 285,000, blah blah. Okay, you can do the calculation yourself. Counted so many times I've forgotten anyway. So it was held that the bank retained the equitable interest in the money, obviously. Mm. This was an interesting situation. I'm sure some of us would have loved to have been there. Okay, this was in Sydney quite some time ago. All right, they accidentally started overpaying customers. So BBC had an interesting write-up about this. Say if you take money under those circumstances, what is the correct course of action legally and morally? Right? So obviously morally is wrong. Okay. And BBC also got it right by saying that legally it is wrong. As we have seen just now in the case of Shajok Shikari. Okay, if money has been you've been overpaid and you're under obligation to make restoration of it, then that part that you're supposed to restore to make restoration is considered to be belonging to, in this case, the bank. Although it is pointed out in this article, interestingly, that banks will be covered under insurance and the banks will probably not chase after those people who got the extra cash. So those who got that extra cash, well, hooray, good for you. Okay. So that is then property belonging to another. Okay, now we are going to look at the final element of actus reus, arguably the most important element, which is appropriation, right? Appropriation. Well, you can say that's the most important area. It's definitely the most interesting area. Okay, so we are talking about property must be appropriated. What does it mean for property to be appropriated? Let's just recap first. Property is found under Section 4, includes money, personal property. That's the key areas. And that property must be belonging to another. And it can belong to another if it's in possession of the other, or if it's in control of the other, or if or it belongs to the person having propriety interest over that property. So let's go to appropriation. Appropriation found under Section 3.1. Yes, another long definition. An assumption by a person of the rights of an owner amounts to an appropriation, and this includes where he has come by the property, innocently or not, without stealing it, and any later assumption of a right to it by keeping it or dealing with it as owner. Okay, we're almost coming up to the hour mark already. The good thing about this online learning is that if you need to take a break, take a break. Okay, we are coming to a very interesting area now, appropriation, technical area also. It's quite technical. I love this. So if you need to take a break now. Okay, so there are a lot of things that we need to talk about, right? Assumption by a person of the rights of an owner. What are the rights of the owner? And what if you actually appropriate with consent? So basically, what Section 3 is saying that if you take on the rights of the owner, if you take on the rights of the owner, any assumption by a person of the rights of, you assume the rights of the owner. Now, please be very careful on this. Okay, please be very careful on this. Please listen carefully now, right? Because a lot of students have made a mistake on this. Of the word that is used here is assumption. Okay, assumption. And unfortunately, this has caused a lot of law students to mistakenly understand what appropriation means, because they say that, oh, if I assume that I have the rights of the owner. No, right? It's assumptions of the rights of the owner. So it's nothing to do with assuming. Assuming is what you think. I assume that I have the rights of the owner. right? It's what you think. So that should come under mens rea. Appropriation is actus reus. So it's not assuming that you are the owner or assuming that you have the rights of the owner. Appropriation is that you take on, okay, perhaps a better phrase, a better way to say it. If you're going to have problems, remove the word assumption and just says that if a person takes on the rights of the owner, or even another way to say it is that if you act as if you are the owner, because we're talking about external, you act like you are the owner, you assume the rights of the owner. Okay, so what are the rights of the owner? Okay, property belonging to me, I'm the owner. Okay, what rights do I have over this? What rights do I have over this? I have the right to use it. Okay, obviously, I have the right to use it. I have the right to uh, yeah, take photo, take a selfie, right? Take photo of you. Okay. So what else? I have the right to use it. I have the right to give it away. Right? Here you can have my phone. I have the right to give it away or to borrow it to somebody. I have the right to throw it away also. So these are all my rights because I'm the owner of it. Right? So you cannot come and use the phone without my permission. You cannot come and take it and sell it or give it to another person or even trade away because you are not the owner. But if you are the owner, then you can do it. So if you come and take it and use it, you are assuming the rights of the owner. Okay? If you come and take it and sell it, you are assuming the rights of the owner. And that is appropriation, right? When you act like you are the owner, when you do something that only the owner can do, then you are considered to have appropriated that property. Okay? Now, what if you appropriate with consent? So you come to me and then you ask, can I use your phone? Sure, you can use my phone. So I've consented that you are allowed to use the phone already. So yes, you are using the phone, but you're using it with consent. Can it be considered to be appropriation then? What do you think? Well, there have been a lot of interesting cases that have been dealing with this. Right? Let's look at the historical development. Right? The case of Lawrence against MPC. This was in 1972 case, and the accused in this case was a taxi driver. Right? He was a taxi driver. The London Black Cat, where we talked about the Black Cat rapists earlier on under the sexual offences. So now the Black Caps are still around, but this is they have a more modern Black Cat. Very comfortable, very spacious. You'll be surprised at how spacious it can be inside a Black Cab. So unlike in Malaysia where taxis can only take like 4 people, right? You'll say 5 people cannot sit taxi, so only 4 people. This Black Cab can take more, right? Can take a lot of people inside. But it is expensive. It can be very expensive. So I never really got had a chance to sit in a Black Cab before until until years later when I went back to the UK for a conference paid by the university. So I managed to, yeah, I was allowed to take a cab and claim for it. It was very comfortable and very spacious. There is the inside of the cab. So now the accused was a taxi driver and he was waiting outside Victoria Station. No, not the restaurant, right? This is the Victoria Station, the actual real Victoria Station, which is a actual station, right? An actual station in London itself. So it's not a restaurant. There are restaurants in there, but it is an actual station, right? And it's quite important station. At Victoria Station, that's where the London Underground comes. There's a London Underground stop. Trains also come to stop at the Victoria Station. And then right next to Victoria Station is the Victoria Bus Terminal. And you can take buses there to travel around the UK. Buses to Cambridge, Oxford, and things like that. For those of you who want to, yeah, I was going to say want to do traveling when you're in the UK, but I don't know when can that actually take place again. So yes, he was waiting there, and then as mentioned, there are trains, and these trains, some of the trains come from Europe, So there are foreigners who actually are coming into the UK through Victoria Station, right? And the taxi driver was waiting outside there, and there was this Italian man. Okay, there was this Italian person who went to this taxi driver, went to this taxi, and he asked to be taken to Ladbroke Grove. Okay, now, unfortunately, this Italian person was not very well versed in English. So Italians, they will normally talk with their hands. Okay, especially you watch Italian football, right? I have an Italian flatmate. Okay, when I was in the UK. So yeah, it's true. And we always laugh at him. And there was once when I asked him, asked him, if we tied your hands, right, will you be able to talk? And he was like, okay. So yeah, I also asked him what's the meaning of this, right? Uh, Unlike what one famous Canadian comedian said, it's not true, right? What the comedian said is not true. Okay, so it doesn't really mean that. Okay, anyway, yeah, doesn't mean that. Basically, it's just like, oh, what's going on? Why is this happening? What are you talking about, right? Yeah, you do that. So he was going there and told the taxi driver, oh, can you take me to Ladbroke Grove, right? Actually, Ladbroke Grove wasn't very far away. So this is the London Underground map, right? So if you can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. Uh, right, Victoria Station is there. You can see Victoria. There's the green line. It's a district line, and then there's the Victoria line, the light blue line, and the yellow circle line. So Victoria Station is there, and Ledbroke Grove is actually just here. You could have taken the underground there to Ledbroke Grove. So not very far away from Victoria. But anyway, yeah. So the taxi driver said, "Yeah, sure. I can take you there." And then he says that when dropping off there, he basically told him that you have to pay this amount, a certain amount. But the but the victim, the Italian man, didn't understand. Okay, he didn't understand. Uh, so what the taxi driver did, because he had the wallet open, so what the taxi driver did was the taxi driver reached out and took the money out from the wallet. Right, he took the money out of the Italian man's wallet. Okay, so he was clearly appropriating that property. Now, his defense on appeal was that, yes, I took it. Okay, it was his money, and clearly, right, the rights of the owner, he can only take it, right? But I took the money, I handled the money, assumed the rights of the owner, but you see, he allowed me to do so. So the argument was that there was appropriation, but it was consented. Okay, he allowed me to do so. Now, the court, which is the House of Lords in this case, held that the issue of consent is irrelevant when talking about appropriation. Yes, right? You are considered to have appropriated the property even if you had consent to do so from the owner. So, like I said, right? You want to use my phone? Sure, you can use my phone. You have my permission to use my phone. Okay? And then you use it. Now, the law says that you are appropriating my phone. You have appropriated it, and as long as you're using it, you are appropriating it. Doesn't matter whether you can say that, but he consented to it. Okay? Because the issue of consent is not relevant if you look at section 3 itself, right? So the court said that Parliament didn't intend a requirement that there must be that whether there must be consent or not. Section 3 is silent when it comes to the issue of consent. Right? It just says that if you assume the rights of the owner, it didn't say if you assume the rights of the owner without consent. So Parliament didn't include those words without consent, and therefore consent is irrelevant. Doesn't matter whether there was consent or not. Now, next case is the case of Morris. This was a case on supermarket label swaps. Right? This was a case where people go into the supermarket and they change the price tags, right, in order to cheat the supermarket and to pay for a lower price for a particular product. Of course, these days we have overcome this problem because you see that when you go in the UK, I bought this from when I was in the UK. They've got barcodes, so no more price tags, no more labels, so you can peel off the price tag, right? There are these barcodes, and which is printed onto the usually the product itself. Okay, so you cannot change the price, so to say. Now, interestingly, right? If you go to the UK, you'll see a lot of this. Do you see what's written there? The allergy advice. What does it say? Right? It says that it contains eggs. Hello. I was so amused when I saw this. I'm buying a carton of eggs, right, from Tesco, and is warning me by telling me that, hey, please be careful, okay? This eggs contains eggs. I remember I showed it to my flatmate, and this Hungarian girl, she was like, oh, these British people, they are so stupid, right? Yeah, but you see a lot of this. A friend told me also that she went to buy some nuts, and then yes, allergy advice, it contains nuts. So you buy milk also, they say allergy advice milk. The milk in the milk that you're buying contains milk. Now this is to protect themselves from being sued, right? For making sure that people are warned. Anyway, yeah. So yes, the barcode. Uh, But this was at the time, right, when price tags were used. So something like this is obviously a Malaysian product. And some people, what they do is that they tear off the price tag and put on the price tag of another product which is cheaper. Because you see, the price tag doesn't tell you what's the product, just talks about just states the price only. Okay. So then the question in this case, right, was that when a person swaps the this price tag, are they considered to have appropriated the that product or not? And in the case of Morris, it was held that yes, because they have done so of without the consent of the supermarket. So they are emphasizing that there is a need for element of consent, right? When you talk about appropriation, right? So Morris differs from Lawrence. Both are House of Lords decision. And Morris says that no, consent is something that is important, that's relevant. Because the argument was that uh, when people go into the supermarket, they will take the products and put it into their shopping bags or put it into their carts. The moment you take the products and put it into your shopping bag, you are appropriating it. But you're allowed to do so, right? The supermarket allows you to do so. So therefore, they say that it is not appropriation because it is with the consent of the supermarket, right? You are allowed to take the products and put it into your shopping bags, okay? But what the supermarket does not consent to is that they don't consent that you tear off the price tags and you change the price tags to it. So Morris said that yes, consent is important. Consent is relevant when talking about appropriation, right? The court said that there must be an adverse interference, right, on the rights of the owner. So you need to see whether was there consent or not. Now, Morris also held that when you talk about assume any assumption of the rights of the owner is assumption of any of the rights of the owner. Okay, you don't have to assume all the rights of the owner. Just any of the rights of the owner, that's enough already. As long as you assume any of the rights of the owner and it was without consent, then you would have appropriated that property. So here we are left with two House of Lords decision. One says that consent is irrelevant. The other said that consent is relevant. Now you look at the definition under section 3. What do you think? Do you think that the consent is relevant? Any assumption by a person of the rights of an owner amounts to an appropriation. So that was first case 1972, then 10 years later, 1984, and then another, moving on to the next decade, 1990, Dobson and Gaffelec, right? Gaffelec is an insurance company, general accident, fire, and Life Assurance Corporation, right? Okay, it's quite a mouthful. So yeah, GAFLAC. Now this was a Court of Appeal decision, right? It's a Court of Appeal decision. So the Court of Appeal was left with a decision: should they follow Lawrence or should they follow Morris? Because both are House of Lords decisions. Okay, both are House of Lords decision. Doesn't matter that Morris was decided later. Doesn't mean that it is a better authority. So the because Morris did not expressly overrule Lawrence. Okay, so Dobson and Geffelet Court of Appeal had the decision to make. Now, what are the facts of the case, right? In this case, it is regarding a gold watch and a diamond ring. So what happened here is that the victim bought insurance, property insurance for his watch and diamond ring. Okay, watch and diamond ring, and he insured it against theft. So which means that if the ring and the watch, among other things, was stolen, then the insurance will cover it, right? The insurance will cover the theft and pay him back. So as usual, the insurance companies, yeah, they are not so keen to pay out, right? They're not so keen to pay out. Um, what happened in this case, though, was that it wasn't so straightforward. What happened in this case was that the thief, well, the alleged thief, came to the owner and pretended to wanting to buy the uh, ring and the watch. Okay. Now, after so-called buying it, right? Uh, the owner gave the ring and the watch to the thief, but the payment didn't come true. All right, the payment did not come true. So therefore, the owner said that well, this person stole it from me. He's committed theft, and therefore I should be able to claim the insurance because it was insured against theft. Now the insurance company said that wait a minute, right? If you say that it was stolen, you must be able to prove all the elements of theft. And in this case, was there appropriation or not, right? And the owner said that yes, there was appropriation, right? He basically assumed the rights of the owner. Insurance company said, but he did so with your consent, because at that time the owner thought that the payment was going to be made. So when you gave him the watch and the ring, he took it, he appropriated it with your consent, right? He appropriated it with your consent, and therefore there is no appropriation. Okay, there was no appropriation. What did the court decide? The court decided to follow Lawrence, right, and said that consent is irrelevant. Right? At the end of the day, did the person appropriate the ring and the watch or not? And yes, he did. It was property belonging to the insurance holder. Uh, it was done dishonestly, and there was intention to permanently deprive him of it. So therefore, all elements of theft have been satisfied. Theft was committed, and therefore the insurance company will have to pay Dobson. Right? Doesn't matter whether the appropriation was with consent or not. Now, finally, right, there was a Court of Appeal decision who decided to follow Lawrence instead of Morris, but we finally get another House of Lords decision, case of Gomez, right? And House of Lords in this case was able to compare Lawrence and Morris and decide which was the right judgment, which was the right decision. Now, the case of Gomez was regarding well, a person who sold electrical goods, and and the accused went to buy some product, and he paid by check. Okay, he paid by check. Now, these days, I think rarely people use checks. I don't know whether you're familiar with how checks work. People pay with credit cards, and now there's so many other e-wallets, right? Touch and go e-wallet and all these things. So I don't know whether people actually use checks or not. Now, under the law, check is as good as cash, right? You pay by check. So basically, what this check says is that it will pay into your account. So you put your name there, it will pay into your account the amount that's stated on this check. So I must write the amount that 200 ringgit, 400 ringgit, 500 ringgit, 5,000 ringgit. And then the instruction would be that this pay into this person's account. So what you do is that when you get a check, you go to your bank, you bank in the check, so to say, and, and your bank will basically request from my bank, okay, because I'm the one who wrote the check. They request from my bank and say that, Mr. Lyman On has asked us to, has said that he's going to pay this amount to into the other person's bank, right? And what my bank will do will then deduct the money from my account and hand it over to the other bank and put it into your account. So that's basically how checks work. But sometimes when they ask my, for example, if they ask my bank and then the bank look into my account and say that, hey, hang on, Manon's bank has got not enough money, right? Has got not enough money because the check says that to pay 5,000 ringgit, but in his bank account, he's only got 4 ringgit. Okay, it's only 4 ringgit in the bank only, right? Which is not too far from the truth. But anyway, yeah. So in that kind of situation, they say that the check will bounce, right? The check will bounce. That means that the payment will not go through. So that's what happened in this case of Gomez. He paid for the products using check, but when they finally bank in the check, they were told that there was no money in the account. So therefore, the check bounced. There was no money coming in. So the case was basically that the person who bought the electrical products has stolen that product. Now his argument was that yes, I took the product, but it all hinged on the issue of appropriation. And again, just like in Dobson's case, the argument was that yes, I appropriated it, but it was with the consent of the owner. It was with the consent. So therefore, there's no appropriation. So Gomez had to decide, are they going to follow Lawrence or are they going to follow Morris? Right? So Gomez, he paid by stolen checks, which means that basically they found out that the money cannot be banked in at all. Now, this was what was held in Gomez, right? The defendant can appropriate with the consent of the victim. So Gomez held that Lawrence was the binding precedent and not Morris. So Morris has been rejected, right? Lawrence was taken to be the binding precedent. That means that consent is irrelevant. Now this creates a very broad actus reus for theft. In fact, as you will see, as we can see just now in the example of my phone, appropriation happens quite a lot. Hey, can you lend me your pen? Right? Yeah, appropriated your pen already. Okay, can you lend me this? Lend me this. As long as you consent to it, then appropriation has already been committed. Doesn't matter whether there was consent or not. Now, the courts went even further, right? If you disagree with Gomez by saying that consent is relevant, or it doesn't make sense to you why consent is relevant, wait till you look at the case of Hinks. Hinks was a case where a woman, she was dating a man of low intelligence. That's what the facts say, right? The victim was of low intelligence, and she persuaded the man to give her money on a few occasions. So he happily gave her quite a sum of money, and in the end she was charged for theft. Right, she was charged for theft, and the defense here was that he gave me the money, he consented that I take the money, so how can it be appropriation? And on top of that, basically he gave me the money as a gift. Now, House of Lords in Hinks held that receiving full ownership, right, can still be considered to be theft. Appropriation is a neutral term. So that means that if somebody gives something to you, you can have it, you take it, you can be considered to have committed theft. But bear in mind, we are talking about, but appropriation is just one element. So if you take it and, well, if you take the property which belongs to another person, okay, You have the intention to permanently deprive the other of it, but the key thing is that was it dishonest or not? Was appropriation dishonest or not? So therefore, appropriation is a neutral term, right? Doesn't matter whether it was with consent or without consent. And that's the reason why I agree with the case of Gomez. Although for Hinks, I feel that perhaps the offense of fraud would have been a better fit instead of theft. Instead of committing theft, perhaps they should have come under fraud, but that would have its difficulties also, right? That would have its difficulties. And we will deal with fraud later on. Okay, but the thing now is that for appropriation, so you see, actually, the definition of theft itself talks about it must have dishonestly appropriated property, right? The appropriation must have been dishonest. So appropriation on its own is actus reus, is neutral, right? We're not looking at the state of mind. So it doesn't matter whether there was consent or not. Doesn't matter whether there's consent or not, right? If you took it without consent, then it can be said that it was dishonestly appropriated. It could be said that way, right? Looking at the facts. Okay, so the issue of consent would come only when we talk about whether was it dishonest or not. All right, the issue of consent is only relevant when we talk about whether was there dishonesty or not. But when it comes to appropriation, we just see whether was there an assumption of the rights of the owner. Did he act like he was the owner or not? Doesn't matter whether he had consent. There was consent. If there was consent, then it will clearly goes to show you can use that as an argument to say that, look, I wasn't dishonest. I appropriated it because he consented to it. So some say that these cases are contrary to common sense and absurd, but others have defended the case of Hinks and say that this is a necessary response to exploitation, right? Maybe it was hard to come under fraud, but she was basically trying to take advantage of a person of low intelligence and taking his money. So do you think that Hinks is right or fair? Does it make sense? Maybe sometimes you think that it may not be right, but it's fair because she was clearly taking advantage of him. But then again, at the other hand, right, the argument is that maybe he wants it to be taken advantage of. So, yeah. At the end of the day, if whatever that she did was done honestly, then it wouldn't have been theft. If there's a dishonest element, then she can be considered to have committed a criminal offense. So again, let's look and see at the definition of appropriation. Any assumption by a person of the rights of the owner. So clearly, Parliament did not intend for consent to be considered when talking about appropriation, right? But you will see later on when we talk about dishonesty, yes, we need to see whether was there consent or not. Oops, daisy. Sorry. Right. Appropriation, section 3.1. Rights of the owner. What are the rights of the owner? Basically, what the owner can do with the property because he's the owner. Right. According to Morris, any of the rights of the owner. But do you need an adverse interference of the owner's rights? No. Gomez applied Lawrence and said that you don't need. Now, is the issue of gift relevant also? King said that no. So, doesn't matter whether was it given as a gift or not, right? At the end of the day, it's very technical. We just got to see was there property? Did it belong to another? Was it appropriated? And was the appropriation dishonest? And was there intention to permanently deprive the owner of it? Or permanently deprive the other of it?